Hello everyone, this is L Spectra. Welcome back to the Land of Empires, and this is episode 4 of my Apex Arena review series. Now, in the first couple episodes, we reviewed what people ran in Season 6. In episode 3, we reviewed what people ran in Apex Arena using a combination of Season 7 and Season 6 heroes. And in this video, I plan to take a few steps back and go all the way back to Season 1. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to review what people are running across Seasons 1 through 3, and maybe Season 4 if we have a little more time at the end. And what I'm really interested in seeing is how the meta has changed since many of us have played back in Season 1. Now, if some of you would recall, a few months ago, the developers released 6 additional heroes, which can be acquired in Season 1, especially in terms of their armor. Their armor, I believe they can be unlocked the moment that the heroes come, which is probably within the first few weeks. And the moment you buy their armor, you can use all the new Season 1 hero skills. And from one of the videos I made previously, I did a first impression on these 6 new Season 1 heroes. And overall, their skills and stats looked to be slightly stronger than Season 2 heroes, actually. So it's pretty crazy that you can kind of use these new Season 1 heroes and be running something equivalent to the power of Season like 2.5 or something. So let's dive straight in and see what people are running. I think this is the newest bracket. So we can see in the newest bracket, which I believe is within the first 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks after the game first launches, you can see these people are not very well equipped. However, they already have many of these new Season 1 heroes, especially together with their armors. And to remind some people who are new, what the Armament does is that it allows you to use the hero's skills from whoever it is equipped on. So for example, if I were to equip, I believe this is Apollo, if I were to equip Apollo's armament on Heracles, Heracles will inherit Apollo's skills 1 through 3. So every skill except for the awakening skills is inherited through the armor. Now, stats are not inherited, but skills are one of the main components of power in this game. So let's take a look at the first confrontation here. On the attacking side, we have Elrican using tier 10 tier 10 troops. On the defending side, we have Panda using tier 9. Now, when there is a tier difference, especially between tier 10 and tier 9, I won't really review who won unless it is the tier 9 guy who wins. Because from what we have tested, tier 9 troops are significantly weaker than tier 10. They are actually, I believe, 60% weaker than tier 9.5, who are like 30% weaker than tier 10. So it's pretty crazy. Physically, the gaps do not seem very high. So if you just look at the base stats, they only go up by like 1 or 2. But in a practical sense, tier 10 heroes are like 3 times stronger than tier 9. So looking at the right side, we have tier 10 versus tier 9 plus. So we'll just move on to the next bracket because the power difference here is so big that it's not very, we won't really get much information out of looking at what they are running. So in Warzone 26, we can see that they are already in Season 2, surprisingly. And this guy is Glorious 3, and the other guy is Glorious 1, so quite imbalanced. So this guy on the right is Glorious 3 versus a Glorious 2. Is it worth taking a look at what they are running here? It seems that the imbalance is still way too big. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I've kept off reviewing these earlier seasons, is because during the process of rushing an account's power, like you can rush a lot in the early days, in the first couple months, and the power gaps between big whales and smaller players is really high in those first few months, or even afterwards. But the gaps do become smaller once everyone hits Glorious 5 or Glorious 10 within seasons 2 and season 4. So here we have a Glorious 5 versus a Glorious 3 versus a Glorious 4. So we can take a look at this confrontation here. On the attacking side, we have Caesar, we have Cleopatra, and we have Valkyrie. So this is a combination of Season 2. So Caesar is considered as equivalent to a Season 2 hero, a fairly strong Season 2 hero actually, alongside Cleopatra and Valkyrie versus, I think this is Saladin, whatever her name is, Europa, I think, and Apollo. So taking a closer look at the armaments, it appears that they are using the hero's armaments on themselves. And this is actually something that appears to be the case in a lot of these confrontations. Let's take a look at what people are running here. So he is running a very bad armament. So he is running Valkyrie's armament on Europa. This really makes her weaker because you are, in theory, running Season 1 skills on a fairly powerful Season 2 hero. So this is not very rarely a good move. And he's running Europa's armament on Valkyrie, which is a good move. I would say this is a good move, but I would not run Valkyrie's armament on Europa. Just leave her naked without armaments. She'll do fine. Like, not all heroes need armaments. Typically, if you look at the more recent heroes, the strongest heroes will not have like armaments. Like, for example, Season 7 heroes. Season 7 heroes are not have not had their armaments released, but you will not see anybody using an earlier season hero's armament on the later season heroes. And this is because the armaments make the heroes weaker. So immediately, this is appears to be a mistake that a lot of newer players are making, using either the armaments on the respective hero themselves. Now, there's no issue with that when the hero is weak, but when your hero is strong, their armaments should be transferred to a weaker hero so that the weaker hero can borrow the skills of your stronger hero. And this is really how the meta should be played out, not only in the early game, but across the entirety of each season. So looking at the right side again, we have Sky, who is one thing that I need to check first and foremost is the formation stats, because a telltale sign of a well player is having VIP 12, which you can observe based on the infantry formation stats. Now, looking at these infantry formation stats, neither of these players are T12, so we can kind of compare the differences. Looking at the stats, they are, well, benefiting the left side quite heavily. So there is definitely an uneven balance in terms of stats here. So on the left side, we can see we have the resonated Titanos together with Season 2 plus 2 Season 1. On the right side, in theory, I would say the right side should be stronger. And formations-wise, I know I made a formation video. Probably just a 4-1-2 formation will benefit earlier seasons as well. In other words, you want to run heavy infantry, fewest cavalry, and a moderate number of archers. So let's see if that was the case. So on the right side, he did run heavy infantry, fewest cavalry, and a moderate amount of archers. So that this is true for both sides. But the right side did lose pretty heavily, which is interesting. And it does appear that Saladin did not really hold up. So he was not able to do much damage compared to, say, Caesar. Caesar was able to dish out a lot of damage. And Valkyrie actually also dealt out a lot of damage compared to Europa. Of course, Europa is a supporting hero, so we don't really expect her to deal too much damage. And Apollo here did a reasonable amount of damage, even though at the end of the day, it simply was not enough. And I think the main contributing factors to this difference, we can see the incredible difference in the all-troop attack. And this is due to the higher support that Sky got during the matchmaking process. So during the matchmaking process, you could support either side, and whoever gets the higher percentage of support will get a moderate stat boost, which is actually quite impactful in the early game because people's stats are simply not very high. So in the first matchup, even though I would say overall the right composition is superior, the left side did win. Now we can see that the right side actually did a reasonable amount of damage considering the differences in the stats. Right. How much higher is the infantry stats? So the infantry stats is not that much higher. But yeah, we have not only one glorious tiers difference, which is a 15% more attack and 15% more damage resistance, but also much higher stats. So next fight, we have Caesar with Valkyrie and Cleopatra. So this is kind of when Big Bang could have used some of these armas on Cleopatra or even his purple and blue hero, which I have no idea why he is using here. Or even, I mean, if he does use it, which is fine, he really needs to use their respective armor. Not their respective armor, I mean more powerful armor. Because their native skills, like their inherent skills, are just incredibly weak, especially in the face of strong Season 2 hero skills. Technically Season 1, but I'm just going to call them Season 2 because their power levels reflect Season 2. So these people actually ran fairly good troop formation setups. Just their armor setups was rather poor. And in this matchup, we can see that the right side ran an even formation setup, which I wouldn't blame him since the power difference here was just so big, probably. So we have a non-VIP 12 versus a non-VIP 12. So it is not as big as I initially thought, but the difference is probably still very big. Not that much, actually, because one side, although he is 2 glorious powers down, he does appear to have higher stats. So relatively even stats, I would say. So these two people are actually more evenly matched than I had initially thought. So yeah, let's take a look at what's going on. So on the left side we have, yeah, this is just a very bad move overall. So this hero, he is crippling his Europa by running Valkyrie's armament on her, and also he is running an archer. Like this archer, literally, she has no offensive rage skill. Her rage skill is a very minor buff. It gives a very minor buff to the team and really does absolutely nothing. So this archer is a wasted potential. He could have easily ran, for example, Cleopatra's armament on this archer, and it would have been much better than just running this archer. But I mean, at the end of the day, he won, so I wouldn't blame him. So on the right side, we can see that he ran Athena, what's his name? I forgot. And then Anubis, who is a fairly strong archer hero, but his composition is just way too weak. So that's number one. And secondly, he didn't really buff his march size. The march capacity of the left player is actually quite impressive, 195,000. Yeah, that's quite impressive. That's like fully buffed Glorious 5. Whereas the right side, I don't think he used any buffs for his march size. So his next team, we can see that he is running Valkyrie with her own personal armor and some random purple hero. And once again, he easily could have ran Season 2 armaments on Valkyrie and the purple hero, and Athena armament on Heracles. Because personally, I think Heracles is a very weak infantry hero, even though he is legendary tier. In the face of Season 2, I think his defense is just very weak. So a combination of very poor troop formation and very poor armament usage resulted in Tabas. Tabas is lost. Like overall, I think the stats and formations had a slight advantage towards SAJT. Definitely had a slight advantage for SAJT, but Tabas could have definitely pulled out a win here by relying on better formations and better troop formations and better having a higher troop total, having better armament usage and better troop formations. Like here, his Athena, if he had more Athena, like if he allocated 4-1-2 setup, maybe he would have lost the cavalry, but that's not really a big deal. But his Athena would have been alive, and he would have been able to deal a lot of damage to the following team. And the following team would have easily gotten crushed if he had the Season 2 armor on his team too. So that is my rundown of this fight. Tabas kind of threw, but we cannot really blame him since he's only been playing for a couple months and he probably doesn't really know how this game works. Moving on to Warzone 24. We are actually in Season 3 now. So people are starting to get Tier 11. Now, the difference between Tier 11 and Tier 10 troops, thankfully, is not too big. It is nowhere near the gap between, say, Tier 10 and Tier 9.5 or Tier 9.5 and Tier 9. So the gap between Tier 10 and Tier 11 is a 25% boost in damage dealt and a 25% reduction in damage taken. I wouldn't really say 25% reduction. It's more like your damage taken and divide that number by 1.25. And that is not the same as a 25% reduction. Anyways, so we have full Glorious 5 versus full Glorious 5. 1T11 really won't matter too much, but I want to check whether one of them is VIP 12 and the other is not VIP 12. So this guy is definitely VIP 12. We can see the tremendous boost that VIP 12 brings to the table, especially in terms of infantry attack and basic infantry ferocity. And these early stats are very important towards the infantry power, especially because the base formation stats are simply so low. And they are, after all, a separate multiplier from your other stats. So having 80% versus having 160% is like a 2 times difference. Well, it's not really a 2 times difference. It's like 80% versus like 220%. Yeah, 80% versus 220%. That's a 2 times difference. 260%. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty bad at mental math. Okay, so yeah, formation stats. We can see that one person is a VIP 12 and the other person is not a VIP 12. So this will be definitely a tough fight starting out for Captain. But let's see if he made the right moves in terms of armaments as well as troop compositions. So starting off with the first fight, we can see that even in Season 3, these people appear to be still making the same mistake of using the armament on their respective heroes. I think these armaments could be better used, for example, on a Season 1 team. His Season 1 team is just completely crippled because they're Season 1. He had the opportunity to make this Season 1 team equivalent to like a makeshift Season 3 team by using the Season 3 team's armor on his Season 1 team. But he didn't do that, so he paid the price. In terms of troop compositions, I think this is it's not a terrible composition, but it's certainly not a good composition. For Season 3, I think the better composition, once again, is 4-1-2 or 4 very few cavalry and 2. So maybe for his amount of troops, I think it's 210,000. I would use something like maybe 130,000 infantry, 70,000 archer, and maybe 10,000 cavalry or 9,000 cavalry. You don't really need the cavalry. He's not really doing anything. So from what I can see here, Horus maybe died so fast that Hanzo didn't really have the chance to use his ultimate, or maybe Hanzo got crushed by Hannibal. So it's actually very interesting to take a look at how this fight turned out. I think what might have happened is that his Hanzo just got crushed by Hannibal, because he's running so much Horus that I don't see Horus dying like at the very start of the battle. Or maybe he does. Or maybe he does. Do I need to take that back? Okay, so Hanzo did die. So Hanzo died to Hannibal, which is unfortunate. And it does mean that there's just such a big stat difference between these two players. I actually have not checked the stats yet. Let's take a look at the stats. Yeah, the difference is just so big. So big. I mean, the right guy didn't really stand a chance. I'm not sure whether proper armaments would have been able to bridge the difference. I don't think it would have been able to. It depends on his other two teams. Let's check what else he's running. So he's running full Season 2 and full Season 1. So there might have been a chance. I'm not too sure. Let's see what the equipment distribution is on the bottom player. So for Captain, I'm just mostly taking a look at his stats. So he has relatively respectable stats for his first team, which is Season 2. And looking at his Season 3 team, why is it so weak? His Season 3 hero, which is much stronger than Season 2. Has lower stats than his Season 2 team. Like, these stats are not bad. Like, this is what, 800, 87, like an average of around 750%. Now we look at his Season 3 infantry, which is an average of like, what, 550%? So we went down from 750% to 550%, which is a big gap. And I really think that he lost an opportunity to maybe pull out a potential win because he just simply ran his best gear, I presume, on a very bad team. Like, I don't know why he saved his best team for last. This is probably not the best move, especially in earlier seasons. Just run your best team in your first team, and then run Season 3 armor team as your second team, and then run a Season 2 armor team as your third team. He probably still would have lost because the hot guy is VIP 12 after all, but it would have definitely not been as 3-0. So on the other side, we have Glorious 5 versus Glorious 5 and 4. Let's hope for a more even fight in this case, and looks like we have a more even fight on our hands. Let's take a look at the formation stats. We have not VIP 12 and not VIP 12, so it looked relatively even stat-wise. They also look relatively even, maybe a bit of an advantage to the left side. So let's look at the first clash here. So we have a mirror team actually, with Hanzo's armor surprisingly being used on Anubis. So this is kind of like a hybrid team where we have a Season 3 armor and a bunch of Season 2 armor. So that's pretty interesting. And now, given that, I'm a bit surprised the right side team lost, even though the right side team ran higher troops. Was it a formation issue? It does not look to be a formation issue. Yeah, in this case, it looks like Hanzo straight up was not able to carry his weight. Could that have been an issue with formations? So his archer is definitely weaker formation-wise than the other player. So if we take a look here. And stat-wise, the archer is weaker, but not significantly so. It's definitely a little bit weaker. Although I'm rather curious why he would not run not run Horus's armor on Athena and, Hannibal's armor on Lancelot. Okay, that's his name, Lancelot. I think it's a rather lost opportunity for Genie here. Yeah, I have no idea why he didn't run better armaments on these two heroes and maybe use his Season 3 team as his second team. Yeah, once again, people just tend to use these armaments on their own respective heroes. And yeah, it's just kind of weird. Like, the benefit that the armaments give on their own respective heroes is only like a 10 to 15% stat bonus, which is nothing in terms of practical like combat. So versus the next team, he won pretty easily. Well, due to the other team probably having very few infantry. The other team still had infantry, surprisingly. So yeah, I don't think one mistake that I think Genie kind of made in this confrontation was not using Season 3 as a single team. And I think Season 3 does have some degree of synergy to it. Like how Split Ace 22 ran as his last team. His mixing and matching is just kind of weird here. Like, troop composition wise, I think it's fine. You have heavy infantry, decent number of archer, and fewer cavalry. Although I think the cavalry is still a bit too much, but I digress. Yeah, overall, I think Genie could have improved by just running the Season 3 team as a single team rather than just mixing and matching. Like, the idea he had was kind of fine. He ran a lot of troops. He used the formation buffs. I can tell that he kind of wanted to win. So he kind of like play kind of creative here, but I don't think it paid off for him. If I were him, I would have just ran full Season 3 Team 1, Season 3 Armor Team 2, and some kind of Season 2 Arma Team 3. It would have been a fairly boring formation setup, but I think he could have pulled out a win with that setup. If we were to go to Warzone 23, we are still in Season 3. So this is probably the last bracket featuring Season 3. So Warzone 22 will probably be featuring Season 4. So I'll leave Season 4 to another video. In this video, I will just review Seasons 1 through 3. So let's see what these people have been cooking. So Full Glorious 5 and Tier 11. We have one Tier 11. We have one Tier 11 and Full Glorious 5 Tier 11 and one Glorious 6. Glorious 6 actually on the Cavalry. That's an interesting choice. Maybe he's rushing Glorious 7 and needs the Cavalry for Glorious 7. But first and foremost, we will take a look at these two people. It's 3-0 wipeout, so maybe one of them is VIP 12. Yes, so this top guy is VIP 12, and this bottom guy actually is also VIP 12, but he lost in a landslide. Let's see if we could figure out why that was the case. And so here we have Season 3 versus Season 3, but one side lost pretty badly. Yeah, it's a stats reason. Yeah, the right side lost due to having low stats. And yeah, it's hard to really see like exactly which side carried. To me, it looked like this was such a landslide that Hanzo wasn't even able to use his awakening skill or anything. So let's take a look. Like, Hanzo's real power comes from his awakening skill. If your infantry dies before like Hanzo is able to use his awakening skill, then Hanzo's kind of not doing anything. And Hanzo's kind of second power is the ability to dish out a lot of like just damage before releasing their first ultimate skill. And this is why sometimes you will see this low skill damage, because you can see before they even release their ultimate skills, the enemy team just failed instantly. So I think this is not winnable for Skull, no matter what he could have tried. Yeah, Glorious 5 was one Tier 11 versus, I mean, his stats were just incredibly high compared to Skull, so there was really no chance for Skull to pull out a win. So on the right side, we have some Korean dude versus Chemical Engineer, and it does look like a more balanced fight here. We have VIP 12 versus VIP 12. Wow, everyone's VIP 12 now in Season 3. First team, we have a mixed match of Season 1 and 2 versus Season 3. And this kind of, I guess, showcases the power of Season 3. Let's take a quick look at stats. Stats-wise, they are... I think there's a slight edge to Chemical Engineer. But I think overall, this was probably kind of like a landslide win. Oh, yeah, not exactly a landslide win, but he kept sufficient cavalry and archer. Damage-wise, we can see here, Hanzo, I guess, was able to shine. Or maybe Caesar was already almost dead by the time that Hanzo used his ultimate. Let's take a look. So Caesar is quite a good defensive hero, although he is weaker than Horus for sure. But Caesar is definitely a good defensive hero for Season 2. And by defense, I just mean that he takes fewer damage. Okay, so Hanzo's using his ultimate, I think. It's hard to tell because Caesar was almost dead by the time Hanzo used their ultimate. But yeah, Hanzo is always a good investment because he is commonly used even in Season 7. So he's seen used in Seasons 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And he's a very popular hero to fit into a lot of compositions. Initially for his ultimate skill damage, but later on for his awakening skill, which is quite good. So in the second team, we can see that Chemical Engineer was not able to deal too much damage, presumably due to his lack of infantry. So if we were to take a look at this fight, I kind of want to showcase Hanzo's ultimate skill damage, but it does not appear that any of these fights are letting me do that. So we have Hanzo about to use his ultimate. Okay. And okay, I saw like 11,000 damage being done, which is really not much. So it's not as much as I expected. Is his Hanzo just not very strong or something? I'm not too sure. Archer, I mean his Archer looks decent. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm not really seeing Hanzo's power in these early confrontations. Formation wise, I mean his stats are pretty good, honestly. So it might have just been due to a lack of troops on his end. In fight number 2, well, he was using just poor armas. That's all I can conclude out of it. Poor armor setups resulted in his loss, probably, because he definitely would have won this fight had he used Season 3 armor. And his next fight, it would have been kind of hard, I guess, because he would be running Season 3 and a Season 2 team against his Season 3 team. Let's take a look at the stats. Yeah, his stats are quite good for his Season 3 team. And this is what I mean by using the best gear, best stats on your best team. And it really pays off. Yeah, so overall, in summary, we didn't really get to see much, like a lot of action in terms of the new heroes. But one of the things I definitely noticed is that people are using the heroes' respective armaments on themselves. And that is a mistake people seem to be using across, people seem to be having a lot across seasons 1 through 3. Like seasons 1 and maybe even season 2, it's kind of understandable because people are just starting to feel out the combat in this game. But for people in season 3, like they've been playing for at least like 3 to 4 months. The fact that they are still equipping the heroes' personal armors on themselves, especially for the latest seasons, is just kind of weird and definitely a lost opportunity, sometimes being the difference between a win and a loss. So hopefully everyone enjoyed my impressions of the season 1 through 3 Apex Arena combat. Sadly, there was a lot of imbalances, which is expected early on in the game, but maybe we'll come back to this someday, and hopefully we'll be able to gain a bit more insight in the future in the later episode. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see everyone in my next video.